Hello and welcome. My name is Jess, and you're listening to Legaltini, a dynamic, hopefully insightful, and somewhat entertaining podcast documenting my experience getting into law school and following my story in the years to come. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm very excited to share what I have to share with you. So grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. So join me in welcoming Brooke Dorris, who is a fourth-year associate at a law firm in Dallas. Brooke and I go way back. We went to college together, and so now she is this big, successful lawyer in Dallas, and she's doing something with corporate law and things like that. So Brooke, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am honored to be the first guest on Legaltini.
Yay! It's so exciting. So tell me a little bit, we'll get into like the background in your law school experience, but tell me quickly kind of what you do now, what your job and your role is.
Sure, yeah. And so like you said, I'm an associate at a law firm here in Dallas. There's associates, there's partners generally at law firms, and associates are younger lawyers, more junior lawyers. I'm a fourth-year lawyer, and so that is a common title for someone of my age to have. I am a transactional lawyer, which means that I do not litigate. I don't go into court. I don't prepare briefs or filings for judges. What I do is I help my clients engage in commercial transactions, whether it's investing in securities, buying and selling companies, offering shares to the public, to the private, that sort of thing. My job is to draft paperwork to make my clients money.
Yeah, perfect. Everyone loves you. So
yes, I'm the one they call when there's not a fight. I'm who they call when both parties, both sides want to make money. Yeah. There's not a winner and a loser in transactional. There's just two, hopefully, winners.
Oh, that's kind of a cool take on that. I like that. Cool. Okay, so let's take it back several steps. What surprised you the most about law school? Obviously, you went to SMU, which is in Dallas, great school there. What surprised you when you got to school?
I would say the thing that surprised me the most generally about these 3 years of school is that it really did mold my mind into thinking in a completely different way going forward. Because as we know, law school doesn't teach you how to practice the law. They don't actually teach, litigators how to make a filing in the state of Texas versus federal district of Delaware. They don't teach transactional folks how to draft a registration statement of securities. They teach you how to think like a lawyer, think with logic, and how to synthesize information succinctly to your client. They're forming the building blocks of how you think in the practice that you choose to do after you graduate. And so I guess, so going back, the most memorable thing is that I think completely differently now. I feel smarter, honestly. It's a good
feeling. That's great. Was there a moment where you felt like that all kind of clicked, or did it just like build and build and build, and then all of a sudden 3 years later you're like, oh wow, I'm smarter now?
One thing I think I realized, and one of my mentors here at this firm put this kind of to fruition for me, is that once you feel like you can explain and talk about something without feeling like you're reading off of a script, without feeling like you're trying to rack your brain for the precise black and white rule or language or what you're trying to explain, and you just know it because you've been doing your reps, you've been reading about it, you've understand it, you've been writing about it. When you're able to just talk off the cusp about a topic, that's when you know that you're finally starting to learn. Your brain is developing those muscles, the muscle memory of what you're talking about. And so that hit me kind of as a third year law student when I found myself giving people advice who were 1Ls and 2Ls, that I didn't have to really, rack my brain and look into my outlines or notes for advice. It was more just what I already knew.
Yeah, it was just kind of it right there at the tip of your tongue, like, oh, this is, of course, what I would share with you. So what are some of those things, if you were to share maybe like your top three or like a few advice for 0L or 1L or 2L students?
Well, I guess the first actual piece of advice I would give 0Ls and 1Ls is that everyone is just as nervous as you are.
Yeah.
Anyone who's acting like they know what they're doing, or that, oh, well, I know my best friend's already a lawyer and I already know which horn books to buy. I already know what all these cases mean. they're still sitting right next to you in that classroom, and they have not been through 1 year going through the trenches, reading through those cases and answering questions in class and taking those crazy exams at the end of the semester that all determine your grade essentially.
Okay, so first bit is we're all here. Like, we're all here together. Nobody really knows more than the next person. Anything else besides that? I've heard a lot of people talking about getting book stands. Because that's like apparently the one thing that everyone needs.
Oh, absolutely. It was one of the best purchases I definitely ever made in law school. I prop that thing up on the table, and you can put your case book on it. You can print out your outlines and sit it there. When you're craning your neck every day over a book down, it's very bad for your back. You're already going to be sitting at a desk quite a bit once you start practicing the law. And so it's good to have it upright with your eyes parallel to the ground.
Exactly. Anything that you would do differently if you were going back in time and you're starting at SMU all over again?
2 things. One is more practical. I would have taken much more practice tests my first year of law school. I think a lot of students get caught up in trying to memorize and regurgitate the cases that they're studying in class, like the facts of the case you learned about, which that it's a great thing to know and understand. But when you're taking your exam at the end of the semester, you're applying rules to a new set of facts. And if you don't have the practice of writing down CRAC or IRAC or whatever the acronym is that everyone will learn for how to give a good law school exam answer, you're not going to be able to do it in that 2-hour block of time at the end of the semester well enough to get the grade that you want to see. So I would take practice tests early and often.
Did you just find those in the library? Did your professors provide them to you? Where was your source? Okay.
Oh, good question. There are so many sources. Your professors will often give practice questions. They will often have things in the library from previous exams even. There are commercial horn books that you can buy that have practice tests. Even with my study group, with my group of friends, we would rent out a study room at the law library, and we would just start kind of making up questions too, making up crazy questions. For torts, me and one of my good friends, we decided that the topic was about how government entities often have certain immunity against tort claims against them. There's lots of different rules and exceptions to rules and exceptions to exceptions to rules and so forth. But we put together a scenario like, what if we're at a national park and there's a goat that mauls somebody and there were signs here and this park ranger did this action. What would be, based on what we learned in class, who's liable, are they above? So the answer is as much discourse as possible with your friends and within your, in your study groups. There's all kinds of sources and ways that you can just exercise your brain with figuring out ways to answer questions that could be on an exam. Just the practice of typing out answers, even if they're terrible the first 5 times. It's the only way that you'll get better. So that's my first piece of advice. The second one's more general. I would have loved to have tried to make even more friends than I already did. I made a lot of really good friends. Some of them I call my best friends. Also a lot of good just friendships where if I see them out at a bar or at a happy hour or a networking event, and I see them, I say hi and it's great to see them, and we follow each other on social media and stuff. But I wish I had tried even more and just made attempts to create relations in law school. And the reason for that is because these people could be your clients one day. The friends you make in law school, they could be the one who leads you to that dream job 5-10 years down the line after you graduate. They could be a source for investing your money later on. The possibilities are endless, not to mention, obviously, it's great to have friends generally, but
but those connections kind of never stop serving you, I think, because of those networking options. And you might, hear of an opening later in life that is specific to this type of law that your really good friend was keen on. And so then you can say, oh, have you met this person? They'd be great for that. And so you can kind of help build connections for people.
Exactly. Yeah. And for a lot of people, law school is the last pool of peers that you'll have where there's so many people surrounding you that have things in common with you that you can form friendships with, oftentimes relationships with too. But yeah, so in some, take practice tests, make friends. Don't just go home to your apartment each time after class and eat lunch at your apartment. Obviously, there's money to think about costs, but try to bring your lunch and sit in the library or sit in wherever the campus cafe is where all the law students go. Commiserate with someone sitting near you that has a casebook too, but maybe they're not in your section, so you don't know who they are, but it's that easy to.
Would you say that like a broader interpretation of that could be to keep some perspective of things outside of law school, that your studies and your classes and the grade at the end of the semester isn't everything, and that thinking kind of broader would be, look around and realize that these are some people you could be friends with forever. Make the most of that opportunity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is the chance to foster relationships with people from all kinds of backgrounds that at one point had the same goal as you. And maybe that goal changes. Maybe you have literally nothing in common right now, except for that you're sitting next to each other in civil procedure.
Right. And I wonder if this kind of impacted your branching out to fewer people, but you went to a school pretty close to home. Would you recommend that? Or did you ever kind of wish that you went further away so that you would have had a little bit more maybe forced, okay, I gotta, dig deep and make some like more friends here because that's kind of what you have? Or do you feel like, no, it was a great experience to be close to home?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say, well, my favorite answer as a lawyer, it depends.
Right.
It completely depends. But for me, I like to think of it more as I chose to go to a law school in Dallas, Texas, as opposed to choosing a law school that was close to my home. That was kind of a secondary icing on the cake.
Okay.
I knew that this city it's a great region of the country. It's growing. So many companies are coming down here to plant their roots and build headquarters here. Cost of living is great compared to other big market cities. There's lots of young professional people living here. There's great food here. I think that it was helpful, I guess, that I happened to grow up in an area that just North Texas is thriving right now. It's a great place.
It's having a moment for sure.
Absolutely having a moment. And so, but yes, I lived close. I was close to home. I was about 40 minutes away from where I grew up. A lot of my friends from college ended up living in Dallas as well. There's definitely a comfort to that. And there's definitely a bit of, not regret, but I would have loved to have moved to a brand new state, not knowing a soul, and seeing what happened there, seeing where I would end up taking the bar exam. Yeah. Maybe it would have been somewhere else. It's definitely something I think for every person's life journey, you got to think about what your goals are.
Yeah. Totally. No, like big decisions for sure. So stress, kind of speaking of big decisions and lots of pressure, I hear it's stressful.
Nah.
What can you tell me about coping with stress and the intensity of law school? Did you have any certain methods that really helped you? What would you recommend?
I think what got me through the stress and intensity of law school, particularly the first year, because that is the most just culture shock 9 months you will experience possibly in your life. I think what got me through is that I surrounded myself with an appropriate combination of people to get me through each passing hour, day, week, etc. And so let me explain. Like I said, I made several very core good friends in my law school section, who I'm still great friends with to this day. We all practice at law firms in the same city still, different law firms. But these are the people that I would study with. We would exchange our fears and our stresses. We're in the trenches together and we understand, oh gosh, that one professor today, like I didn't even understand that lecture. My notes don't make sense. Or, man, did you understand this case that we were assigned? You're able to exchange and kind of feed off of each other's energy just to let off steam with someone who totally gets with granularity what you're going through.
Yes.
That being said, it is not healthy to only speak to your fellow law students.
Okay, good to know.
Times of the day. You shouldn't just be talking about the cases that you're reading and making up fake goat scenarios with these people all day long.
Right.
So
So that's a good practice. Do something else too.
Yes, do something else too. And so that I also, and I guess this ties back to, I lived near my hometown. I made time with my non-law school friends and with my family, and talking with them kind of brought me back to earth, that there is a whole world outside of law school, and that, no matter what happened in class today when I was asked to recite the facts of a case and I froze and couldn't speak, I know that despite that, no one is dying, no one is bleeding. No matter what happens, my mom is sitting there right in front of me, and we're talking about something totally irrelevant to law school.
Right.
And that's something that you need too. You need that balance, talking to people who care about you, know your situation, feel for you, are rooting for you, but they don't know the nitty gritty of what it actually means to have to brief a case or prepare a memo for your writing class, but they're there to listen.
Right.
So I think if you strike that balance, if you surround yourself by the appropriate combination of people, it really, really helps get through the stress.
I love that it's not just like, oh, meditate daily. Because I feel like that's what I hear a lot when it's, talking about stress management. And meditation is great, don't get me wrong. And exercise, I think, is really big for me personally with stress. And I know that from my life in healthcare, where it was just crazy, and exercise really helped me. But I love the perspective of like surrounding yourself with people, a good balance and mix of people that can both really understand you, but then also give perspective of like, this is not the whole world. There's a whole other universe happening around you.
Exactly.
Perfect. Yep. Okay. I love that. Okay. Tell me what you did for internships. What led you to this corporate M&A private equity thing?
Oh, yes. Good question. So my journey is as follows. My first semester, I did fine with my grades.
It wasn't a rave review.
Yeah. It wasn't a rave set of grades, honestly. I did my best. I studied the way I thought I was supposed to study, how I studied in high school and how I studied in college. And I got good grades then. But like I was saying earlier, law school forces you to think differently, and you must adapt, and you must practice, and you gotta think like a law student, not like an overachieving good college student, which is what 99% of the people coming in your section are as well. It's a tough learning curve. And so after that first semester, I really made it a priority to do more practice tests, to really get into the groove of how to prepare a good written test for my professor at the end of the semester so I can get better grades. And I ended up doing that. And it was very,
that's awesome.
It worked out really well for me. And so that's something I try to tell people who are disappointed with their first semester. Hey, keep trying, because the ones who did great, they might be resting on their laurels a little bit, and you can harness that and grind your way, and you can find your way back up the ranks easily.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Easily. And so for that reason, my goal was to work at a big law firm my first summer, as well as my second summer, but my grades didn't quite average out to making that. And so I ended up actually the first half of my summer at the public defender's office in Dallas County. And it was in the juvenile division too. And so I shadowed public defenders whose clients were children and teenagers who were in trouble, getting into trouble. Most of them came from really, as you can imagine, tough backgrounds. This is a big county, lots of kids who, are committing crimes because they're in tough spots. And I helped represent them in a law student capacity, of course.
That feels really meaningful, I'm sure.
It really was. I think it really opened my eyes up to why lawyers exist and why they're needed. We need lawyers for everyone. That's the beauty of our job. We have a set of morals that goes outside of the facts of what someone did. Everyone has a right to a lawyer. And
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
No, but it's so well said. I mean, it's a right to be represented and have someone who has your best interest at heart and is fighting for you. I mean, I think that is really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so it was a beautiful first half of the summer. There were uncomfortable moments, tears even, when I would read about what some of my supervisors' clients were up to and what they were facing. And so, but to bring it to a bit of a lighter note, one thing that was really helpful about this first half of the summer, is that it exposed me to the courtroom and litigation and proceedings in front of a judge and preparing certain motions that are filed in a court. And it was really, really great for me to get a taste of that, because while it was interesting and I learned a lot of the good basic just courtroom etiquette and procedure, it helped confirm that that really wasn't what I was interested in doing at the end of the day. So it was really
ruling
nice.
Something out like that is probably just as good as saying, oh, I really like this thing.
Oh, absolutely. You only get 2 summers, and sometimes in semesters of law school, you can do clerkships or externships and stuff, but it's such a limited amount of time to help eliminate things from your list and add things to the list of what you're interested in. So it was definitely a very productive use of my time to get to do that. It helped confirm, yes, I'm so glad that I'm on this path. I'm glad I'm becoming a lawyer, but it also confirmed, I'm not really interested in this area. So it was great. The second half of my first summer, I actually got to study abroad at Oxford, because SMU.
So cool.
Oh, it was amazing. It was 8 weeks of living in Oxford with about 25 other fellow law students from my section and from the other section, but we're all the same class year. And we took 2 comparative law classes that would apply, that they'd count as credits to graduation. And this was right during Brexit. And so the discussions with the professors over there, it was amazing.
What a fascinating time. Wow.
Oh, it was great. So I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
So if someone has an opportunity to do study abroad, you say yes 1,000 times, yes, do it.
1,000 times, yes. Obviously funds permitting, because you're paying money. You're certainly not making
it's
money.
Not
you're
cheap.
not just not unpaid. It's not cheap, but if you can make it happen, gosh, I really recommend it.
Yeah.
Great experience. And so that was my first summer.
Okay.
And then, so usually in law school, very beginning of your second semester of law school is what we call on-campus interviews take place. And so that's where usually big law firms, also mid-sized law firms and small boutique firms, sometimes they all participate in this giant, it's like sorority rush. They come to your law school campus and they conduct 20-minute interviews of law students to determine whether to hire them for the following summer to clerk for them as a second year law student clerk. So
your second semester of 1L, you're interviewing for your second summer?
That's right. Basically 9 to 10 months in advance, you're interviewing. And so that's why people freak out so much about their first year of law school, because your grades from that first year usually determine whether you can secure a job in some of the higher market private practice firms.
Wow. Okay.
And obviously
that's so soon.
It's so soon. And exactly. It's a very narrow window of time that if you miss it, there's ways to lateral later. There's always exceptions to rules, but that's generally how you get recruited in the larger firms.
So you interviewed and got an internship for your second semester, or for your second summer. Internship.
Yep. I got the call for my offer in August of 2016. My start date for that offer was the following late May 2017.
Wow.
Yep. So I basically spent the whole 2L year
knowing you had a job lined up.
Knowing I had
an internship,
Knowing I had an internship lined up. That's right.
Wow. Okay.
It was a good feeling. It was strange. A lot of attorneys gave me advice like, oh, you don't need to care anymore. You got the job, and then you'll get an offer after your summer for full time, and you're all set. You don't even need to try your second and third year. I completely disagree with that. I hate that people try to say that. A lot of overachievers that want to look cool and effortless say things like that.
Okay.
I'm glad I didn't listen to them, because I still tried. I cared a lot about what my professors thought of me my second and third year. I wanted to still participate in class and be prepared and learn.
Yeah.
Your second and third year, that's when you're taking classes that you actually get to pick.
Right. Well, and you never know who you're making an impression on.
Oh, absolutely.
And who,
Exactly.
even like we were talking about earlier, who in your class is a potential future client. And if they know that, well, Brooke never did anything, she kind of just threw in the towel because she already had her job. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you never know who
Oh,
you're kind of interviewing with informally as you go.
oh, completely true. In fact, I have a colleague at my firm who she lateraled over about a year ago to a different practice group in my office. We were friends in law school, distant, close, friendly friends. And when they asked me, oh, it says on her resume, she went to SMU also. What are your thoughts? And I remembered just a couple like snapshots in my mind, but it was of her speaking in class with intelligence. And it was her
Yeah.
working hard in law review, like killing it at her officer position that she had. Those are
Right.
the two things I really remember. And so
Yeah. So you're
that's,
interviewing, you didn't even know when you're interviewing.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
amazing. What a great example of that. So with that second semester job, obviously you got a job from that. What was that process like as far as working for them over the summer, being their intern, and then that turning into a full-time job? Was it just like here's your offer letter, see
Mm-hmm.
you next year?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, how it typically goes is it's usually a 10 to 12 week summer program. You're there working 5 days a week the whole summer from late May to early August. And you're given assignments from various attorneys. Some firms want you to express interest in a certain practice group or maybe your top 3 practice groups, and you receive assignments only from those partners and you rotate around throughout the summer and you get assignments and stuff. Other firms are more organic. They kind of just, you have a mentor that checks in on you and asks, what are you interested in doing this week? What do you want to try? Oh, you want to try real estate? Okay, let me talk to this partner and see if he has a piece of something he can give you. It just varies, but
Okay.
in sum, it's a very long summer program of doing assignments and turning in work product to attorneys who then they evaluate it and they submit their reviews and evaluations to the firm recruiting department. And all of that is reviewed and they determine from that whether or not they want to give you an offer to work there full time the following more than a year later after you take the bar exam.
Would you say that's pretty common for people to get offered that, or is it kind of?
It is very common, almost uniformly, you get an offer full time.
Oh, okay.
If anything, you really have to F up. You really have to do something bad in order to not get an offer, or there's a recession or a pandemic that can also
Right.
result in
Or
no
something
offers.
completely outside of
Which,
anyone's scope of
yes,
control
you never know
happens.
what to expect these days.
Oh my gosh.
As long as you are enthusiastically turning in your work and trying your best, they know that you don't know what you're doing. They know you're probably
Right.
going to get it wrong. But if you make sure that the things within your control, such as proofreading the memo you're writing, turning it in on time, asking questions, if you're doing those kinds of things and you're not getting completely wasted at the fun events that they put on for you all summer, the happy hours and stuff, you're going to get an offer. Yeah, people are often surprised at how it works with the big law recruiting machine. Everything from how the timing starts and depends on whether or not you did better than your peers on a 2-hour test from a semester's worth of learning shit
Right.
9 months in advance, to then fast forward to a summer where you get projects, you kind of need to check boxes and do them well and try and attend the social events that are planned for you and be respectful and not a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get an offer to start for something that you are absolutely not trained for in any regard.
You are not ready for.
Not ready for it. You're being overpaid. The firm is losing money on you when you first start. And usually for the first year, sometimes 2 years, they know that they're losing money on you. They're paying you a lot of money to be trained.
Well,
and
they're
to be
investing
available.
in you.
They're investing in you, exactly. And so it's an interesting process. And I think that's also why a lot of people don't end up staying in big law private practice more than a couple of years, just because it's stressful. It's it's the epitome of imposter syndrome, kind of similar to how law school is.
Right.
And
Well, that was kind of what I wanted to ask you next is you've been there for 4 years. Why stay that long? I mean, you've been at the same firm for 4 years, right? Or kind of, I think there was like a change of ownership at some point, right?
yeah, so what happened is I started there and I worked there for 8 months. And together as a group, we left that firm to start the new office of another existing international law firm in Dallas. So we moved as a group. And so it was a new LLP behind the secretary desk, but it was the same partners and associates that I had already been working with, a lot of the same clients.
And is that because you're just really excited about the job that you're doing, or do you love the people you're with? I guess what has kept you there?
It's such a good question. Oh, they call this job the golden handcuffs because it's very good pay. And a lot of people could really use it to pay off their loans. There's a huge draw for people to make big bucks. But I think for me, the reason I stay, I like the sophisticated work. I like working with clients that everybody has heard of, publicly traded Fortune 500 companies, celebrities that people have heard of, very high profile private equity firms. It's great, challenging work. And it opens a lot of doors for, when I decide to move on. So I think that's the main reason I choose to stay at this time. There are times where I want to just toss my laptop out the window and run away and move to Hawaii.
Do you ever? Oh, no, maybe not move to Hawaii. Do you feel like you get good time off? Like, are they pretty good with like a work-life balance, or is the expectation, no, you're pretty much ours, when we need you, we need you?
Yeah, it's as you progress in your class years at a firm, your time is you're more in control of your time. You have more autonomy. You can kind of afford to take more vacation time and delegate things off. But those first couple of years, especially, you're paid a lot of money to be available. That's a lot of it. It's, these clients pay a lot of money. Our billable rates are really high because if it's a Saturday afternoon and there's an emergency XYZ coming in where we need all hands on deck and we need a junior associate to get in there and take notes on this call so that we can prepare this filing to do this and that, it's expected that unless obviously we're all human, they understand if, okay, you're out for a wedding or in the hospital, but
those are the two.
Those are the two
excuses.
You only get two.
Well, it's kind of what you're signing up for.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you're signing up. If you don't want this style, you can go somewhere else, is kind of their mentality, because they got people lining up at the door.
Right.
Who'd love to take your spot.
Well, good. Well, I mean, thank you so much. This has been a wealth of information. Is there anything else you feel like we didn't touch on that you just like need to share? It's like burning in your chest that you have to tell someone what to, expect or prepare for?
Yeah, so many things. I think the most important thing that people should remember, those listening to this podcast, those who are in law school or thinking about law school or thinking about possibly signing up for an LSAT prep class, like whatever, step you're at, I think you should trust yourself and know that if you're thinking about this and you're ready to work hard and open up your mind and learn and start this new exciting career path that, you hear the people saying, oh, well, I almost went to law school, or oh, I basically feel like I am a lawyer because I watch a lot of C-SPAN or whatever, if you want, I don't know where I was going with that. But basically, like, there's a reason that you want to be here. And so you need to trust yourself and get after it, And there are so many ways to skin a cat after you go to law school. There's just a multitude of routes you can take. There's so many
options. Yeah.
The world is your oyster. Exactly. It's like college and picking your major all over again in a good way. There are so many things you can do. And so just trust it and make good friends, find good mentors, and build your network and get after it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. It was just such an honor to get to interview you and hear your story and your advice and your thoughts. I'm really glad that we got to talk.
Oh, it is my pleasure.
If you'd like to connect with Brooke, you can find her on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me and I would be happy to connect you. That is it for today's episode of Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.